I know exactly what a dwarf is.
I know what a dwarf is, or like, this person's an elf. He's 100 years old. You're not like, whoa, why isn't he dead yet?
I like to imagine little like 8-year-old Hudson cracked open Lord of the Rings, and it was like, Sir Legolas, he's 200 or whatever, and you were just like, whoa! Welcome back to Soap. I am your host, Beware. I go by Mikey. This is my good friend Hudson, my co-host. Why don't you say hi?
What's up?
Thank you for that. So, it's been about 2 years since we put one of these out.
Yeah.
But that's fine because absence makes the heart grow stronger or something like that, right?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, cool.
I believe the last episode we aired was like, hey, we're going to try anime, D&D, and metal music. We have done all those things very successfully.
That's
successfully, in fact, that we took a 2-year absence from doing anything else.
Well, I mean, other stuff kind of happened.
I moved in with you. That happened for like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and then 2 more weeks.
Really long 2 weeks.
And then two more weeks after that until it was about 6 months later. And then I joined your D&D campain.
Yeah.
Happened.
So that should be a story in and of itself.
Yeah,
I feel
we'll
like
hold
that.
off on that
Yeah.
one. The sneak peek is I thought I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and they also had no idea what I was getting them or myself into, frankly. No one had any idea.
Yeah, we should definitely do an episode that's just about like D&D stories, and we should open with that one. But Robbie's not on this one. He will be on future ones. Going forward, we're just kind of have like a rotating roster, you know? Sometimes it'll just be us two. Sometimes it might be you two. Sometimes it might be me and Robbie. Sometimes it'll be none of us.
And we're just going to air, 60 minutes of silence?
68. I don't even know what that's. Anyway, so this week, one of the things I want to talk about. I recently played Final Fantasy XVI. So have like 10 million people. It's really popular. I think it's one of the most popular games ever put out on the PS5. I really, really liked it. But one of the things that I really liked that I think we would have a good time talking about is the power system in that game. I want to tell you first about the one in Final Fantasy XVI, but then I kind of want to branch out, talk about what makes a good power system, makes a good bad power system, which you prefer, why. We can maybe do like hard, soft magic, talk about those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And then at the end, I think it would be cool if you had an idea for a power system that you might want to share. I think that could be kind of fun because I do. But yeah, sound good?
Yeah.
All right. Well, get ready for roughly 40 minutes of me explaining Final Fantasy XVI. That's a joke. It'll be closer to 20. Anyway, I will be keeping this mostly spoiler-free. So anyone who's listening, this is just a discussion of the mechanics of the world. If you haven't played it, this will not spoil anything major for you. Super simple, basic right out the gate. In this world, people use magic to cast spells. Spells fall into one of 8 elements: fire, wind, lightning, stone, ice, light, darkness, water. Right? Relatively simple fantasy setup.
Yeah.
How the magic is distributed is what's really interesting. So most people cannot innately use magic in any way. They have to channel it through an object, crystals, which draw magical energy out of the air and then like focus it into a spell. That's how most people do magic. Some people are born with the ability to just innately channel magic without using crystals. They're called bearers. And then finally, there are dominants. Dominants are special bearers that can channel more magic, specifically because their souls are bound to like ancient godlike beings. They're called icons. Dominants are the coolest. They're also like all the main characters in the game. But they're the most powerful. There are 8 of them, one for each element. They can cast spells, and they can do this thing called priming, where they transform into their icon. So you go from like a normal-sized man to a giant Godzilla kaiju monster thing.
Okay. So I'm seeing where the enjoyment of this game is coming from.
Yes, yeah.
Specifically.
So it's like, oh, cool, I get to hit a guy with the sword. Oh my god, I'm Godzilla, and I fucking threw this guy through a mountain. Yeah. Right. But there's also a thing called semi-priming. where they can channel just a part of the icon's power. It's sort of like going Super Saiyan. I know you're not familiar with Dragon Ball, but they stay the same size. They just get stronger, and they get like cool effects, right?
I'm assuming most of you would spend more time doing that than you would turning into Godzilla.
Yes, yeah. Typically, you only turn into the big icon when there's like a huge boss fight. And some of them are insane spectacle, but most of the time you're regular sized. So that is the really basics, bare bones of how the magic system works. Here's the cool part. There are restrictions based on what type of power you have. So if you have no powers and you can only use magic through crystals, there are no physical drawbacks. You're the weakest, but you have no issues casting spells. Getting your hands on crystals can be difficult, though, because they're a finite resource. So it's kind of like baked into the world building. If you're poor, you're probably never going to see a crystal in your whole life, right? If you're a bearer or a dominant, you have to deal with the curse. The more you channel aether through your body and cast spells, the faster your body turns to stone. And it's permanent, right?
Ooh.
So there are bearers that have worked their entire lives casting spells. They're like 50 plus years old. Their entire bodies are stone. They can't move anymore, except for like maybe their face and part of their torso. The curse usually ends up killing you. In contrast, a dominant who's been fighting with magic for like 10 years, his arm might be partially turned to stone. So it's like slowly happening as they age. It gets worse the more magic you use and the longer you do it. So theoretically, a dominant could just channel a whole nation worth of ether all at once, and you'd turn completely to stone right afterwards. But you'd get a really interesting drawback from essentially becoming a nuke, right? And just blowing everyone away. Finally, the last thing, there are social ramifications based on which type you are. So most places, if you're a bearer, you're a slave. You're like a slave. A lot of people think that the stone curse is a statement from the gods that these people are like inherently evil, and that they deserve that like horrible fate that they have. So you're enslaved from birth. People work you. They make you do magic until you turn to stone. Not a good deal, right? Dominants, because they're so powerful, they typically get better treatment than bearers. In some nations, they're considered royalty, right? Because they're like blessed by the gods. They can turn into a godlike icon thing. In one nation, being a dominant grants you a seat in the government as an advisor. And in a particularly dogmatic religious nation, their dominant, they treat them like a weapon. They're completely inhuman, right? They just cart them out into the battlefield and make them prime. So all of these different ways that the world and the power system kind of interact with each other is what I think is so cool about it. Obviously, there's all the fun elemental stuff and big monsters, but everything comes balanced with restrictions and ramifications, and ultimately the system informs the politics of the world, and it's really well thought out.
It's actually really interesting because I had written in preparation for this 4 of the things where I'm interested in the functions of a power system in a story, which is 1, the world building element.
Oh, there you go.
2, the character growth and development element. 3, interesting situations and plots, and then the 4th one I think we'll transition into later.
Ooh.
But I am curious. I think when we're talking about like what is a good magic system, a good magic system is kind of tied in with an interesting world. Because if your world completely fails to accommodate the magic in any way, it's like what's going on? So I think so much of what makes fantasy especially so appealing is the ways in which a magic system completely shapes the world, right? There's like an escapist element of this is a totally different thing.
Yeah, when there's like a push and pull between them, it feels like sort of like how technology affects the real world, right?
Yes.
Like if the world existed as it was now, but there were like teleporters, but nothing changed about how people's jobs work, right? It would be weird. It wouldn't make sense. And
exactly.
So the magic system has to be the same.
And also, even just from outside of a practical standpoint, it's interesting to have a world that is different than a world that existed. Right? Like it's a very specific world. One of the things that's interesting about Hyperion, for example, is they have something called farcasting, where it's a portal that's really just there and you can walk through it and end up somewhere else. And super, super rich people have homes where every room is a Farcaster portal that takes them to a room on a different world.
That's okay.
So they can go to a different world and just see whatever the hell that world
So
is.
is forecasting something that you can only do with like substantial money?
It's technology. So they don't. Hyperion's one of the books where they don't fully explain how it all works. They just kind of talk about it as if you already understand it. I like it. I know you don't, but it's implied that it requires a significant amount of money.
So the story behind why you read Hyperion is a few of us went to a Borders, or what was it? It was a bookstore, and we just hung out there for the afternoon, got some books, and I saw this one. I was looking for science fiction. It's called Hyperion, and the back was like, these people are going to this planet, and there's like a dead time traveling god or something, and it's like, it's got all this really cool lore, and I'm like, this sounds awesome. So I bought it, and I brought it home, and it's the first, I bought like 4 books that day. It's the first one I cracked open. I read the prologue, which is like 3 pages, and I was like, I fucking hate this. I'm not reading a single additional page. And so I told you about it, and you were like, oh, you hate it? I'll probably love it. And lo and behold.
Yeah. You know what the funny thing about that is? Even bigger. I read it, and I didn't read the back cover until like I was halfway through. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. Okay, whatever. Proceed.
That is, yeah.
Yeah. But the world building element is super important. And I think power systems that incorporate themselves into the world are innately more interesting. The second element that happens is the character growth and like the progression of competence that happens.
Okay.
Right? And in a video game, I think it's less like a character thing. It's more of like I feel cool, right? Like you're getting, like, yeah, it's a character thing. But in anything like getting powered ups is just a fun story element.
Yeah, so in a more narrative focused game, the character might have some personal growth.
Yeah.
That's tied to them getting stronger. But normally it's just like, I get to punch harder, and that's way cool. That's kind of how they tend to work.
I tend to find it more interesting if there are unique ways to get stronger. Interesting situations and plot around it, like you're talking about, like magic versus non-magic people. And I'm assuming there's a lot of interesting situations you can get put in, like having 2 fucking gods fight each other. And then the last one is that this is the fourth one.
Wait. You purposefully didn't mention it before.
I did.
So I would like to fully explore these first 3 and really stretch this out as much as possible.
Okay.
So people will have to listen to the whole podcast to get this secret.
We're not going to get particularly far. You've already kind of mentioned it, but okay, let's go.
No. You can't skip to the end either, because there will be surprises throughout the whole podcast. All right. No, but I did so you were talking about like the world affecting the power system and vice versa.
Yeah.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about was good and bad power systems. And just saying that made me think of a couple of that I had that were really good.
Yeah, let's go talk about some good ones first.
Okay. So first one, I was saying this is not good because it's going to negatively affect the situation. Bending from Avatar: The Last Airbender. So the situation is that
I know the situation.
Yeah,
for those of you at home who don't know the situation, every time someone mentions Avatar, it pushes back me watching it by, I forget, like a month.
Oh God, yeah.
We've backlogged pretty far.
Yeah, you're a couple
of
years now.
Yeah.
It's such a very good show, and you refuse to watch it.
That's another month.
Deeply frustrating. But I needed to bring it up here because in that world, there's bending. There's the 4 types of bending, and each of the cultures is built around their ability to affect the world, right? So airbenders who can basically fly, they live either up on mountaintops or like they build their buildings upside down hanging from like a cliff where other people can't reach them, but for them it's not an issue because they can just fly around. Or waterbenders all live in the poles where they can just build their homes out of ice, right? Like they're directly correlated.
Yeah.
It's really cool how they do that.
This is actually funny because I used to think this was like insanely good world building, was the Harry Potter series of like how they all go off on a train to Hogwarts and like live at their school. And then I just learned that's just what they do in Britain. Like you actually just take a train to school and live there.
We should rank the British power systems.
I was like, oh shit, wait, for real? I found this out in like high school.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
I have Harry Potter on my list of power systems to talk about.
Certainly on the list.
It's spoiler alert, it's not in the good column.
Yeah.
But we'll get to bad ones in a minute. One I want to bring up, which so I assume there's going to be some more talk about him. The Door, which is from Elantris, which is a Brandon Sanderson novel.
Right.
That's the only one I've read. You've read a good amount of Brandon
Yes,
Sanderson.
but I have not read Elantris.
Right, exactly, because of course.
Or Elantris. I don't know. I think it's Elantris. I don't know. Whatever.
I don't know. I couldn't tell you. They don't explain how to pronounce it.
Well,
Doesn't
you
matter.
say it Elantris, I'll say it Elantris, and then we'll keep our internal logic consistent.
Yeah, there we go. That works. So I assume that you probably had other Brandon Sanderson power systems to talk about, maybe. Yeah, but the cool thing about the Door is that it's similar to the Force, which is also on this list. It's like an underlying power, but what's unique about it is different cultures tap into it in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So the primary way that characters in this book tap into it is how the people of Elantris do it, where it's like almost like a science, right?
Yeah.
They've designed all of these different runes, and when they draw them, they activate a specific ability that draws upon it. So like cast a fire spell or an illusion or teleportation or whatever. But then there's a culture who channels it directly through their bodies and they use it like martial arts, right?
Yeah.
And so it allows for a ton of complexity and differentiation, but at the same time there are strict rules.
Right.
I kind of like that a lot.
Yeah. This actually goes really well, and you'll kind of get why I waited here. This goes well in the 4 point that I was talking about.
Okay.
And this is the Brandon Sanderson specific thing, because he has talked about this in his writing. The push-pull that you run into with magic systems, and it has to do one of these two things to be a good magic system, but it's hard to do both, is that, okay, we have world building, character growth, interesting, situations. Magic systems, right, serve as either a solution to a problem, like a plot-based problem, or they provide like a sense of wonder.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So Lord of the Rings is a great example. Solution to problem, throw ring into fire. Right? That's Lord of the Rings. We know that that's how it works.
Yes.
We also have a sense of wonder. What does Gandalf do? Who the fuck knows? Right? Brandon Sanderson introduced I think it's known, but I think he really popularized the concept of hard magic and soft magic and introduced a set of 4 laws governing the use of magic. And I find that really interesting that you brought up Elantris, because I think those considerations are really interesting, because he has like laws of what makes a good magic system.
I have not read or heard those 4 laws, so please.
Oh, shit. All right.
Share them with me.
So.
And our viewers at home.
All right. To Mikey and our viewers at home,
Yep.
who can see us right now, the 4 laws of magic are: 1, your ability as an author to solve problems is proportional to your audience's understanding of the magic. 2, weaknesses, limits, and costs are more interesting than powers. 3, always expand on your magic system before just adding to it. And the 0th law, as he refers to it, is always err on the side of what's awesome.
Okay.
I don't know if I agree with everything on this list, because Brandon Sanderson is a very, very hard magic person. He was on a writing panel years and years back, and it was on power systems, and he's asked what made a good power system. And he said the audience's ability to understand it, if it has good internal logic. And every other writer disagreed with him. But I am curious what you think about some of those laws, because you've read it and you said it's like a science. That's kind of what hard magic is. Hard magic is understood, and soft magic is like, who knows?
I think I pretty hard agreed with 3 of those rules. What was the second one?
Weaknesses, limits, and costs are more interesting than powers.
Third one was the third one.
Expand on your existing magic system before adding to it.
Can you explain that?
I think what he's talking about is like occasionally like authors will introduce entirely new forms of magic that drastically alter things. For example, Force lightning. That's adding. Right?
Yeah.
Not an ability that has ever been explained or talked about. It's just something that a guy can do. It kind of works, but like that's adding.
Flesh out the pre-existing elements before you add just a...
Force choking makes a lot of sense, right? That's just a technique. You're moving things in the air. Of course, you can someone's throat.
Okay.
That kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Right?
All right, I get it.
I think that falls more into the first one of like this is the JK Rowling special. Adding something that you didn't know that you could do to solve a problem at the very end.
That's bullshit. I hate when that happens.
Yeah. When like, are you familiar with like the Priorian Cantatum thing that happens with Voldemort and Harry's wands where they just can't hurt each other with their wands because they're twins?
No.
At some point, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, if two wands that are from the same source, because they're both from the same phoenix, ever cast spells against each other, the wands stop being able to harm each other and will start regurgitating magic from the old spells they used. They explain this after it happens in the climax.
I see. Okay.
That's just adding.
Yeah. Okay, I gotcha. Because I know, so I watched the movies. I never read the books. I've been told it's a bad thing to do, but I've been told by other people that the books are actually not all that good. Most people are just really nostalgic. We don't need to get into that necessarily, but one of the things I did remember that was kind of bullshit, overpowered items that were like adding, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like magic item, just throw it in there.
The time turner
is
the most
time turner
egregious.
is the one everyone, yeah, right. But like wands changing loyalty.
Oh, yeah.
Like that was not a rule that existed until it was really important right now.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. This is not adding. This is just something that I personally found annoying. Harry using one spell only is funny if he did it for like a book.
Mikey, I fear not the man who has practiced 1,000 kicks one time, but has practiced one kick 1,000 times.
Who said that?
Bruce Lee.
And how's he doing?
I don't know. Was he Catholic? You tell me. You're the one who's supposed to know this shit, Michael.
The man is dead.
Yes.
Next point.
What? All right.
Okay.
Whatever. Fuck you.
Look, all I'm saying is that it's like funny and could even be cool for like a couple books. But like,
yeah, okay.
7, he beats the bad guy by doing the thing he does every day. That's the equivalent. There's a guy on YouTube who he does these like sketch videos that are kind of funny, but one of them is like the guy who first invented movies. And the punchline is at the end of the movie, the good guy does a backflip, snaps the bad guy's neck, and saves the day. I'm like, oh, cool, do a sequel. And he's like, okay. He teams up with another guy, and at the end, they do backflips and snap the bad guy's neck and save the day. And they're like, oh, yes, do it again. And it's just always that every single time. That's how I feel about Harry Potter.
Yeah, that you can run into issues pretty quick of like stagnating, like Harry Potter kind of does with just using like in Harry Potter, they're like he literally fights Snape, right? And Snape beats him because he says, I know what spells you're saying because you haven't mastered nonverbal spells. And I think he says something literally along the lines of, until you master nonverbal spells, you'll never be able to beat me. And they never bring up nonverbal spells again. They don't even put it in the movie.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Okay. That was something I remember thinking about when I was watching them that really bothered me, right? Not that specifically, but the fact that there was even like nonverbal spells, right? Because in the first one, little Hermione is like, Ron, you're pronouncing it wrong.
It's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
Yeah, but you don't even have to pronounce them.
You just have to think it in your head.
Yeah, so what? Is he thinking the pronunciation wrong?
They don't actually explain how it works at all.
It's just...
or
some...
Yeah, I do think that is what makes a bad power system. The second one, I think we both agree on, which is that weaknesses, limits, and costs are more interesting than powers. You were literally talking about that with turning things to stone. It kind of reminds me of, you never read Wheel of Time, but there's like a similar level of drawback of men can't use magic. The ones that can are ridiculously strong, much stronger than other magic users. But the source of the magic for men is different than the source of magic for women, and men go insane when they use it.
Huh.
And each one claims to be one of the original magic users reborn, who is a guy who went insane and is the source of the tainting. The main character is actually that person reborn and actually has that guy in his head. And he has to figure out how to use his magic sparingly before he goes insane.
That's a Sanderson?
Yes and no. It's actually by Robert Jordan. Brandon Sanderson, I think part of when he became famous, he finished it.
Okay.
After Robert Jordan
I
died.
was going to say, of the one Sanderson book I've read, that sounds very similar in that it's like, damn, that's a good hook.
I think it's his inspiration. The prologue is that character killing himself and then turning into a mountain. After realizing he went insane and killed his whole family and threatening this person that he was going to come back and kill him. It's
so
like
turning into a mountain?
Turning into a mountain, yes.
Okay, I will ask no further clarifying questions.
It's a banger prologue. but the flip side of it is that female magic users tend to be a lot weaker. They can link up to each other and magnify their strength considerably. Guys operate solo.
And is this some social commentary, or is it just like this is a cool?
I don't know, dude. It was the 90s when he first started writing it.
That feels
it
like
was
pretty strong.
feminist at the time.
Yeah,
I think looking
like
back more and more, you're like, yeah. I mean, the way like actually the internal logic works is not crazy complicated. There is like a logic behind that. I read it forever ago and don't remember, but that's like the limitation of you go insane is like the lean in. That's the moment where you're like, oh, okay. You were like, you're turning into stone. That's when I started to get interested.
I knew it. I knew you would at that point.
Because like I mean, it's cool, but limitations tend to be more unique than magic. Mm-hmm. Going insane is you can see that progression. And that limitation, I think, is what is part of what makes a good power system. Where we might disagree is the first one, and it's the ability to solve problems is proportional to the understanding of magic. And this gets into the hard magic that you can understand is generally better than soft magic, which is where I think Brandon Sanderson falls.
I would like to, I don't think we've ever actually broken down to why we disagree about this.
Go for it.
So, okay. The reason I think hard magic is superior is when you understand the mechanics of a power system, you can effectively experience the drama that the characters experience, right? So, like, if you're aware that this guy is all powerful except if he's near a banana, like this is stupid, but right, that's a mechanic, right?
Right.
If you're aware of that, and then you see him walk into a scene to fight his mortal enemy, and there's a fruit cart at the side, immediately you're like, oh shit, this might go horribly. You're clued into that, and there's drama there. But soft magic tends to fall into the trap of what we were just talking about, where like you just add something to fix it.
Yes.
Right? Which to me is so much less dramatic and less interesting.
I think that's bad soft magic is the thing.
Okay, please pitch me good soft magic.
I really like the sense of awe that comes with not always understanding how magic works. And it can work in a couple senses. One, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness has some interesting examples of soft magic where you don't know exactly what they're doing and you don't know how exactly it works, but it does make sense what's happening. The musical note sequence is the most interesting magic fight in that series. Mm-hmm. We don't know what they're doing, how they're doing it, or what's going on, but we understand once that harp plucks the final note that means he's going to win and that magic is somehow harmful, right? You understand enough of what's going on to know what the struggle is, but he doesn't ever explain to you, yes, I am tapping into this section of the multiverse to gain this power that does this thing. It's just very beautiful and cool to watch. Even though you understand how someone would win it, which is overwhelming the other person with musical notes, the underlying structure is never explained.
Okay. So I will say, watching that fight, I was like, damn, that was raw as hell. Like, that was really cool.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, so, like, I agree with you on that instance. I think with that, it's, when I picture soft magic, I guess I picture bad soft magic. Because, like, with that, you're right, it is soft magic. I didn't categorize it as such, because it was just like, they're essentially just shooting lasers at each other, but it looks really pretty.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what they were doing.
Yes.
They were just throwing things at each other. But it happened to be music they pulled off a page, and it made the sounds that the notes make.
Yes.
So that was essentially just like a fireball fight.
Yeah, in a sense.
I think that's different from, like, I could turn you into a frog. I usually don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the only time I think soft magic like that can be interesting and is where it works in Lord of the Rings think of all the primary characters in Lord of the Rings. Like not like the characters we spent the most time with, but the people who develop and grow and that we see, right? Aragorn, Frodo, Sam, Merry, Pippin, Gimli, Legolas. Which one of those can use magic? None
of them?
Magic is not at all tied to how they grow or develop. So I think you can get away with a lot of the magic is a sense of wonder because in most situations, they're not actually using it to solve their problem.
Oh, so, okay.
Gandalf does use magic, and when Gandalf uses magic, it's like, holy shit, that's cool. The most important moments of like something being solved is either magic that you can sort of understand, or it's a hugely climactic moment and Gandalf isn't there.
I see.
And the point is actually that Gandalf isn't there. And that's in both in The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings when the climax really hits.
Okay.
That's the second side. But what Lord of the Rings also does, and where I think good soft magic and good hard magic really has to hit a balance, is there's almost no such thing as like pure soft magic and pure hard magic.
Okay. Yeah.
Like
All right.
Lord of the Rings has hard magic in it. It has a lot of soft magic in it, but the ring, for example, what exactly does the ring do when Sauron puts it on? We don't know, but it's really bad. That's kind of cool because it never happens. We just know that it's horrible, right? He gets extremely powerful. The rest of it is Frodo puts the ring on. He turns invisible to everyone but Sauron and his very specific minions. They can super see him when that happens. And he starts to become worse.
Right.
And instead of just being like they become worse, they give you an example in Gollum of this is what happens when you keep wearing the ring. And Frodo starts to go that direction. And that's a hard magic system. All we need to do, this is what happens when you put the ring on. He turns invisible. These people can see him. He's starting to get weird in the head. And if they throw it into the fire, it's gone. And Sauron's destroyed. It would be a bad magic system if they never explained that Sauron would be destroyed if they got rid of the ring. They were just like, we have to get rid of the ring. And it happened to kill Sauron. And they figure that out in the end.
Okay, so what it sounds like is all of the major story beats in Lord of the Rings are operating on a hard magic system. Some of it is soft magic. And this is uncharitable, but this is what I heard, right? Is that it's good that the soft magic character, Gandalf, is not around during pivotal moments because soft magic being there would ruin it.
So I think for me, it's not like, oh, the soft magic ruins it. Because Gandalf is around in certain moments. It's just the moments when the character is developing and needs to do something, he taps into something other than magic. It's not hard magic or soft magic.
Okay.
He taps into something.
That is why I like hard magic, is because that character development is directly tied to, yeah.
However, one of the most iconic and my favorite scenes in Lord of the Rings is the fight between Balrog and Gandalf. And we have no idea what the fuck is happening. We have very vague explanations that do make sense, but we don't know how they work. So for example, Gandalf in the books they explain, Gandalf is actually the wielder of the ring of power that corresponds to fire. They never tell you what it does, but in that moment, fire doesn't hurt him. That's really cool. It's a sort of Lovecraftian element of, I don't really know how Gandalf works. And that's part of why Gandalf is so cool, because he used a spell to stop these things from happening. And I don't fully understand how it works, and in a way that makes him mysterious in addition to cool. And he never loses that element of mystery and intrigue. And in that sense, the world is still really fresh and fascinating to me.
I watched the Lord of the Rings movies once 7 years ago, right? So,
fair.
and I know they're like, you read the books as a child and you love the world, right? So obviously I'm not as familiar as you, but I don't remember being particularly like, whoa, Gandalf is cool.
That's so interesting, because I was like, Gandalf's the fucking coolest.
Although, I will say this. I think I do vibe with what you're talking about, because I watched all the Harry Potter movies around the exact same time, and I remember very little, but I remember my favorite part was when Dumbledore and Voldemort have a crazy soft magic fight.
Yeah.
And they're just throwing shit at each other. I was like,
you don't know how it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that is super interesting. And I love seeing that unfold where something is happening and it has you can see that there's an internal consistency, but the internal consistency is never sat down and explained to you. And I think you can do something like this with soft magic where you tap into something that's kind of beyond you and direct it in certain ways, but you're not entirely certain like, oh, if I say this word, then this thing happens.
Okay, so now that I'm thinking about it, one of my favorite scenes in Infinity War is when Thanos fights Doctor Strange. And again, that's just a big soft magic. That's essentially soft magic versus hard magic. We know what the Infinity Gauntlet does.
Yes.
And we don't know what Doctor Strange is doing.
Kind of know what the Infinity
He's just like, here's a black hole, turn into butterflies.
Yeah.
Make 1 million copies of it. And it was really cool. But that was not like any of the pivotal fights in that movie.
Yes.
So it's sounding like soft magic works really well as like set dressing, as opposed to like, is there an example of a main character in a story that you like who uses soft magic?
I don't know of like, this is the primary character. The primary thing is that he is going to learn how to use soft magic, and none of us know how it works. There is kind of an example of that in a book called Spear, which you would hate. But I enjoyed that as well because the point is not her learning magic. She can do things and you can kind of figure out how it works. I view hard magic as they explain how it works. Not that there's not internal consistency. I think soft magic with internal consistency works very well. I'm convinced that there's a good chance that the author of Spear knew exactly how the magic works and just never explained it to the reader. That's still fine because you can piece together by looking at it that she knows how, she has like a foresight, and the foresight happens when anything that has come into direct contact with a person touches her. So at one point she's fighting someone and he flings a thing of dirt in her eye, but the dirt has touched him and she knows his next move as the result of the dirt touching her because she is innately connected with something like that.
Yeah,
they don't ever explain that that's how it works, but every time it happens, every time something like that happens, she knows. The point of the story is not her growing more powerful in magic. The point of the story is her learning how to interact with people.
Oh, so, okay.
I enjoy it because the magic is sort of what you said, like dressing. I wouldn't consider it dressing. The magic is a core part of what's going on, but it is not a core part of the character development.
It's the set dressing might be a little reductive.
Yeah.
It's like the flavor of the world almost.
Yeah, it's a flavor. It functions into world building. It functions into interesting situations of plots. It functions into solutions of problems. It does not function. The growth of you learning magic is not correspondent to your character growth.
Okay.
I do think in stories where someone is learning how to use magic, and the point is them learning how to use magic, having a soft magic system is not necessarily serving you as well, if that is a lot of the point. I do think I prefer soft magic, like watching a soft magic fight to a hard magic fight. I think hard magic is overdone. I think so many people use it and I'm kind of tired of it. But hard magic works really well, and that's why so many people use it in like those stories. I don't think it's bad. I would agree with you that, like, yeah, there's certain types of stories, some of the types of stories you're talking about. I wouldn't want to replace the hard magic system with the soft magic system. It just wouldn't work. Here's an interesting question for you, though. I have an opinion on this, and I think you might have a different opinion on this. Is Harry Potter a bad hard magic system or a bad soft magic system?
It's a bad soft magic system.
Fascinating, because I think it's a bad hard magic system.
I don't think you can classify it as hard magic because anytime there are rules that are introduced, again, I'm not super familiar with Harry Potter.
Right.
But as I remember
that's right, because you read the books. That's fair.
Anytime there are like rules
Yes.
and there's lore, but that can be contradicted or like at any time.
They
really.
explain how all of the magic works. They explain a bunch of different schools. I think it's a bad hard magic system because they explain all the different rules and they go like, this is what transmutation is. This is what transfiguration is. This is what charming is. This is what... They have different schools of magic.
Okay.
And they go to different classes and the teachers in the classes explain how it all works.
I have a question.
And then they just
Yeah, because I didn't get any of that from the movies. And again, I only watched them once, so maybe it was in there. But where does magical power come from? Is it from a wizard's body? Is it from the wand?
They actually don't explain like this is where magic comes from, but it's like you need a wand to channel spells.
Okay, but like
and magic comes from spells.
There are muggles, so like some people
some people can't use magic. Yeah,
they don't explain why.
Yeah, but to me, the reason it's like a bad hard magic system is they have like a rule set, and then they just break it. Okay, and them breaking it is what makes it bad, right? So them delving more into soft magic is what makes it bad. If
I see,
that's why I think is because it is hard magic and it moves away from that.
So do you think if they didn't explain a bunch of stuff, that would make it good soft magic?
Not necessarily. If other elements of it work, here's the thing: they introduce things like the time turner. They explain how it works, and then it fucks up the plot completely.
Right? Yeah.
Right. Like that's hard magic. They have a thing. They explain how it works. It's not good hard magic, but it is hard magic. And then it goes like, okay, so this fucking thing does this. And the same thing with like Voldemort and Harry's wands not being able to hurt each other. In the moment, it's soft magic and it's bad. And then they sit down and explain it, which one makes it worse. And two, now it's bad hard magic.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So they don't explain like the source of magic, but they explain how it works. There isn't a sense of wonder about magic. There's a sense of this is how people know how to use it. This is how it works. The main character knows how to use it. The main character is getting better at it. And if at any point in time, okay, so you know Brandon Sanderson's always err on the side of what's awesome. Mm-hmm. The Harry Potter books are always err on the side of what's convenient to write, which is why it doesn't tend to. I actually really like the Harry Potter books. I enjoyed them a lot. You know, congratulations on you're one of the most best-selling authors of all time. But like, yeah, I think it's universally agreed that it works kind of in spite of the magic system, not because of it. But I was very curious to see that because like I was willing to bet as we were talking that you would see Harry Potter as bad soft magic and I would see it as bad hard magic.
I mean, I think the fact that I only saw the movies one time probably had a lot to do with that because I do not remember them.
The movies
going
I don't believe they explain it. I think the movies are 100% bad soft magic. I would actually agree. Yeah, the movies are probably bad soft magic.
Because I knew this. So in high school, so if you took 4 years, this is tangential, but it's kind of related. If you took 4 years of art in high school, for your project as a senior at my school, you could just pick whatever you wanted to make, which was kind of a cool little like thing. Also, our art room had all these bricks. The walls are brick, and if you did 4 years, you got to paint a brick however you wanted.
Oh, like that's actually cool.
So I have a brick still in my high school. Anyway, point is, I made a really shitty Infinity Gauntlet because I thought it was cool, and I like modeled it after my own hand, but this other student in that class, he wanted to make the Phoenix wand that Harry had. Like
his main wand?
I think.
That is the one that has a phoenix in it. So
yeah, I remember he was like making it and I was asking him about, cause I hadn't even seen Harry Potter at that point. And he was explaining, he was like, yeah, so wands have to have like a magical component on the inside. Yeah. And it's like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Like I would like to, they just never touched any of that in the movies at all. Which is weird.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the books, what they explain is like a magical creature of some sort. You have to have something from it. And they kind of hint at it. They don't ever explain like, this is how it works. But Harry's has a phoenix feather in it. And the guy gives Harry his wand and is like, oh, the phoenix that gave you that wand made another wand. There were only 2 wands ever made from it. Mm-hmm. It's Voldemort's wand. Which is like a cool, Harry's tied to Voldemort kind of a thing.
Because of the Horcrux and all the...
Yeah. So that's actually kind of cool. And I think that is an interesting character moment, right? It's like they're explaining how something works as hard magic, but the hard versus soft magic isn't that important there. It's the fact that Harry is somehow connected to Voldemort from the very beginning. And Harry's like, am I going to end up like Voldemort? There's kind of that. I don't want it like, a chapter later, he's like, I don't want to go to Slytherin. That's where Voldemort went.
Thinking about this now, because I was just trying to think of like, okay, what are examples of soft magic that I like? And the first thing that comes to mind is like, you know what I fucking love in a story? When a guy finds a magic sword and it just does magic bullshit and it's really cool.
Yeah, and you don't know what the sword does no matter how hard you try to figure out.
I was just going to say, this is D&D related. So in the campaign that we're doing that you DM, my character has a magic sword. And I'm like, sick, a magic sword. How does it work? And you're like, you don't know. And then I spend time trying to figure out how it works. And I like intuit these rules to it. And then I try to enact it in session. And it doesn't fucking do what it's supposed to do, which is, and there's a reason behind it ultimately, but that was ungodly frustrating for me.
That is kind of funny because you were actually doing what I love about soft magic, which is like figuring out how it works without really knowing the rules. And you were right. But like the problem was I figured this out like the more I was doing it, like I'd already built in what was and wasn't going to work. And everything you figured out was stuff that was going to work 50-50 depending on what your character was doing. And also because a part of you was missing, spoiler alert.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, basically everything you thought it did, it does now. So good job.
And as we're discussing this, I'm now realizing that I have, in the campaign where I DM, I gave your character, not intentionally, 3 magic swords.
Yes, and then told me what all of them do.
Yes, I shouldn't have done that. Because I think you would like it a lot more if you had to figure it out. Yeah, no, that was, and now that we have this discussion, in the future, I'll do that. But yeah, I was just like, oh, you got this. Here's exactly how it works. Here's all the mechanics. I shouldn't have done that.
It's kind of cool because I get to be like, you get this, you get this, you get this. I would have liked to just figure out how that works.
Yeah.
But also now I'm excited because I get to deliver to you a sheet with exactly how your sword works.
Yeah, I'm gonna need like 10 minutes alone.
I'm also going to intentionally make it have a lot of complex mechanics now. Of like, this has to happen and this has to work and that has to do this.
I appreciate that.
So, you know, there you go.
Unrelated, really cool that you haven't seen The Rise of Skywalker. But anyway, go on.
This is interesting because I was going to do this, and this is either a hot take or like a take everyone has. Just as it's presented in the films, the Force is a bad magic system. That's my hot take. Now, the potential of the Force is interesting, but as it is executed in the films, all of the films, is a bad magic system.
So can we break it up by trilogy?
Sure.
Okay. Original trilogy is they really go hard on the add instead of expand thing. Every time there's a new movie, the Force can just do a new thing. And it's like, okay. Like Obi-Wan showing up as a Force ghost at the beginning of Empire. Trippy, interesting. I want to know why that's happening. That would not explain how the Force worked in the first one.
Yeah, I was okay with that because they actually did come up with an explanation later. Mm-hmm. It was cool in the moment, and then the explanation is like, what?
Empire
kind of works.
Empire, I think, because that's one with Yoda.
Yeah,
is the best movie about the Force, I think.
Yes.
Like that talks about it and like goes into the philosophy.
Yeah, and there's like whack shit that I love that people forget. Like Luke goes in, fights Darth Vader, chops his head off, sees himself. Whoa, there's this fucking tree. But like the more the series goes on, the more it's like, what does the Force do? It works, I think, like the last one in the original trilogy works because he doesn't actually use the Force to solve his problems.
Okay, so that's what you're talking about, like soft magic. Right? Yeah, okay.
The Emperor can use Force lightning. Great. That's not a plot point. Like, he could have choked Luke and it would have been the same thing. It was just more cinematic.
Right,
Great, whatever. That wasn't a new problem. It was just he's using the Force to kill Luke. This is more visually interesting versus, like, hypothetically using Force lightning to, like, I don't know, wipe out a fleet.
Hypothetically.
Yeah. But he doesn't win because of the Force, right? He wins because he convinces his father come back to the light side, which is an established mechanic. But then the other movies, we got midi-chlorians.
Which was an attempt to make it into a very hard magic, which sucked.
Yeah.
And I think, here's the thing.
That's how I feel about a lot of hard magic, by the way.
Which is fair. I think you could have done that so it didn't suck.
Yes.
But that was such a, like, the Force is so mysterious and, like, philosophical, and you're like, there's little bugs in your blood. It's just such a horrible way of doing it. It's awful.
Yeah.
It takes all of the mystique away from it.
And then they kind of run into the opposite problem in that trilogy. They don't do anything with the Force, really. Like, they don't introduce a lot of it.
If they did, then they had to explain why it wasn't in any of the sequels or the original trilogy, right?
Right. They never explain why Darth Vader can't use Force lightning.
That's a good point. I thought it was because he was a robot and it would make his electronics go beep boop.
They they after the fact in the novelizations and extended version explain that
Is that right? I just guessed that.
The Emperor specifically designed his armor to be weak to Force lightning. This is actually interesting. I believe he, in theory, designed the armor so that if he ever used a full blast of Sith lightning, it would instantly kill him. Which is cool.
That's rad as hell.
Because it means that Darth Vader just didn't die when he was blasting him. Which is actually way cooler.
Yeah, I know.
Because he's just sustaining himself with pure rage.
That is sick.
But they never actually explain that. They have Dooku use Force lightning. Dooku's weaker than Anakin. Still can use it. The interesting thing about and then the other trilogy.
I was going to get into the sequels. If you have another point, go ahead.
And then I just think that's not.
Here's the thing. I want to say this about the sequels. The sequels takes the Force and is like, what would be cool if the Force could do this?
Right.
And then just does it every single time, regardless of whether it's good for the story. So like projecting an image of yourself across space. That's cool. I don't think it's like the same flavor of what we've gotten of the Force abilities so far. Stopping a blaster bolt, I think that was cool.
Yeah.
I'd be fine with that. The other one that I think is sick, not the Force, but it's really cool. Yeah. When they essentially become a portal and teleport a lightsaber across the galaxy. That's sick. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Shitty movie, really cool.
Yeah, I guess my thought with like the Force stuff is the weaknesses, limits, and costs of it. There's not really a drawback to using the Force. The only thing they get into is you will fall to the dark side if you use the Force the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And there is this sense of if you want to do something truly powerful with the Force, like to defeat your opponent, you kind of have to use the dark side. Like Emperor Palpatine is so powerful that the Force, no light side user ever beats him. Yoda comes close. No light side user ever beats him. And that is an interesting theme kind of that I really like. And I think they tend to not delve into that as much. Like the whole light side, dark side element is the most interesting part of the Force. That is the only part I think that actually is a good magic system. Because everything else...
All 9, I absolutely agree.
Was that...
If you're talking about all 9, I absolutely agree.
I think the first 3 you can get away with it because sort of like I said... In the first one, he solves a problem with the Force, but it's literally just he has to use it.
Yeah,
that's it. It's just we don't know what it does. We don't know why it did it. It's cool, but he just had to tap into it, and he had to trust that he could use the Force, and that is all you needed to know. The second one, cool Force shit happens, but in the climax, he just loses. Right? He doesn't do a cool Force thing. No cool Force thing happens. And similarly to the last one, there is no element of the Force that he learns, or like at the last minute, like he learns throughout the movie, yes, but he doesn't do anything at the very end with the Force.
Right, it's his personal connection that wins the day.
I choose to not turn to the dark side. I'm not going to kill my father.
Okay, I think we've talked about a lot of good magic systems. We talked about a couple bad ones. When the first like anime I watched was like Dragon Ball. That was in high school.
Yeah,
and Dragon Ball's power system is like key like monks in D&D, but just blown way out of proportion. So like the better you are at it, stronger you are, the faster you are, you can fly, you're indestructible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then for a while I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And then I tried to watch, I think it was like Naruto or something, and like the characters all have very individual abilities. So like one guy uses puppets, and a different guy can like shoot fire, and a different guy can make like ice mirrors. And it was like, that's dumb. That's too much. It's too much. And then I watched a little bit more of it. I'm like, okay, I get it. It's kind of cool.
I don't think I've ever heard you be like, this magical thing is too much.
Well, now I don't feel like that. But that was like years ago.
This is your character arc. I'm learning.
Yeah. This is my secret hidden backstory that you get, that you viewers are getting for staying till the end. Thank you. But now I'm inclined to agree with you when like you can have, as long as it's rooted in something that is universal and it can express itself in a bunch of different ways, I think it's super cool.
Yeah.
One, I don't know if you're going to get along to watching this. You might. She might make you.
No.
Hunter. I don't know if you're going to. Nen is basically considered by most people the best anime power system. It's like basic chi, aura, whatever, depending on like your genetics and how you were raised, you can channel it into one of 6 different ways. One of which is just enhancer, you get stronger. One of which is transmuter, you can turn it into like electrical energy or fire energy. And then each one is super unique. And then once you've channeled it into a particular path, then you can customize it even further. So characters' abilities are literally anything the author can think up as long as he can slot it into one of those and explain how they got there. It's very cool.
I think we've touched on just about everything that I think we can get into with like what makes good versus bad. I was curious. You said you were potentially working on a magic system.
Yeah, so I sort of had something I wanted to get into before I get into like my idea for a magic system.
Sure.
I've found in my writing, I really like crafting the flavor for magic systems a lot, which is interesting because the part that I like viewing, when I watch something or read something, is I want to know all the rules. In terms of mechanics, I have very little confidence in my ability to actually make really cool rules.
Oh, shit.
Yeah. I have more fun making the soft magic side of it, and just like, here's the lore behind it, but not really how it functions mechanically.
Oh, okay.
I think it's because I have like an internal reverence for really good mechanical systems, and so I don't really. But I wanted to bring up, so in D&D, in my campaign, I created lore and explanations for some of the classes that were unnecessary but a lot of fun, and I kind of put them in some of the backstories. So druids, who for anyone who doesn't know, are basically nature people. They can like turn into animals and cast spells through the power of nature. I kind of added this concept called the heart of nature, sort of like the force. You need to tap into it. They can use it better the more at peace they are with nature, and they level up as they grow wiser. So it gives a reason why, because one of the functions of the druid class is as you get to a high enough level, you stop aging. But that's inherently, you get wiser as you age, so they're like intertwined. I thought that was kind of cool. And then the other thing, we have a player who's a monk, so I crafted a school of karmic arts where they channel positive and negative karma to empower their ki.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know any of that.
Well, yeah, her sword turns black.
I figured, yeah, but I'm also like, I am a D&D character. I got no idea how my shit works.
Well, you're a paladin.
Yeah.
So your whole thing is your god's like, here's some lightning, shoot at that guy. And you're like, got it.
Yeah.
That's basically paladins.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. Interesting. Monks are always also interesting because they run into something where at a certain level you stop being influenced by the effects of old age. Mm-hmm. You still die of old age though.
Yeah.
Your body just doesn't.
That explains like the martial arts master who's 106 and has the big long beard, but he can still like do triple backflips.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's going to die any day.
But until then, he's going to kick your ass.
He's going to kick your ass.
Yeah.
But that also implies like at one point, if you're dying from old age, like you're not ever bedridden, you just like drop dead randomly, like out of nowhere.
Yeah, that almost makes me think of like fate. Like you're fated to die at this day, regardless of how healthy you are.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe it's like you can still get sick, but it says you're not affected by old age. I don't know.
I mean, I guess so. Like the whole thing about monks is they use ki,
yeah,
which is like a natural energy. So I think if you wanted to put mechanics on it, the ki empowers your body to function as though it were young, even though your organs are actually aging.
So it'd be like, yeah, by the way, you have leukemia and you're dying.
Yeah,
you can still like do backflips though.
Right.
You could still like, you can still be sick as hell, and it's just like. Yeah.
But in both, you're sick as hell, but you're sick as hell.
Fuck you.
Because of the backflips.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Okay, anyway, I want to just touch on that briefly. I have an idea for a magic system.
Go for it.
Did you want to go first or me?
I'll let you go first.
Okay.
Because I actually want your help, maybe, potentially.
Oh, interesting. I have had a story/world that I've been crafting since I was in middle school. Mm-hmm. And it's nowhere near anything I would like be willing to share with people. That's sort of a thing, like, if I become wildly successful, then I will spend time making this good and publishing it. It's kind of one of those things. It's like a passion project. But I have an idea for a magic system where everyone has the ability to channel the natural energies of the world, sort of like the ether through like crystals I was talking about in Final Fantasy. And then you can express that magic in different forms based on the different elements. So very similar to that. But these energies are really concentrated at certain points. I call them founts, like a fountain. People are more easily able to channel the type of energy that matches the fount near where their people are from. So almost like evolution or adaptation.
Okay.
So if there's a fount of fire, there's a fount of water, etc. Let's say the fount of water is in the middle of China. If you're Chinese, your ancestors were, you would be naturally really skilled at doing water magic. So it's like tied into that. You could still learn the other types, but you have a natural proficiency for the one that you grew up around. Sort of like bending, but it has more leeway because you can learn the other ones. Where I think it gets interesting is when you master 2 or more of these elements, you can attempt to form a new martial art by mixing them. So if you mastered water and wind, you might be able to create an ice spell, which would be significantly more powerful than either of the 2 other ones. So there is this incentive to learn all of them and master all of them, right? But you're capped by how well you can grasp the individual ones, right? If there's a proficiency in the one that you're born with, that implies that there's going to be a deficiency. It's going to be a lot harder to learn the other ones. Some people might just not be able to do multiple types of magic, right?
Sure.
Just like incapable of it. If you're an insane martial arts master, you can train every day for years, right? You might be able to make a new technique that combines 3 elements into something really insanely strong. And then you start with 6 elements, let's say. That's like where you're starting with. Imagine how many permutations you can have of all of the combinations of 2, and then all the combinations of 3. And then obviously, this whole roster of characters and abilities that you can pull from that. And then obviously the strongest characters in the world would have like 4 or 5, right? And that's like your nuke level crazy powers.
I enjoy, there's like, we've talked about this before, and I think it's actually something that happens a lot. It's a limitation as power increases, which is that power tends to happen the more specific you are. Like, okay, water and wind, ice. It's a less common or useful substance, but it's more powerful because of the fact that it's more specific. There are 6 things, right? How would it work if you combined 2 things and then combined the combination of the 2 things?
So that would be 4 things, right? Is that what you're saying?
Okay, so like if you combined wind and water into ice and combined earth and fire into lava and now you can control vapor.
Yeah, exactly. But anything, so it would be a rarity for anyone to control 2 abilities. Like that's already strange. Anyone doing 3 or 4 is like one of the most powerful people in this whole world.
Gotcha.
The sort of internal mechanics of it is that you are channeling these energies through your body and then expelling them. This wouldn't be stated in the story in any way, but it would kind of be implied, is that you have a nervous system that it has to be filtered through, right? So you just suck in the energy of the world and then you express it as, I'm expressing the fire energies right now. That's filtered through your nervous system, your brain, right? The more complex you get, the more stress it puts on you. So these people that can combine 4 elements, right? They can just fucking split a mountain in half. There's a possibility that they'll have a stroke. Or they'll just like pass out, or they'll slowly go insane, right? So the more powerful you get, 1, it's really hard to get there, but 2, your mental state is directly in danger.
Sure.
So your heroes learning these new abilities, they would also discover that as they're trying to get more powerful and try to reconcile like, okay, well, is it worth trying to master 4 or 5 of these? Or should I just focus on getting really good at doing 2 so I don't go crazy?
That's so interesting because I think when I'm designing stuff, I have to have like, I feel the need to like explain where it came from on like the deepest, most fundamental level, as opposed to like you tap into the weave or whatever, right? Okay, how exactly does the weave work? I get like I get too specific with it.
Okay,
that's actually my struggle with making stuff. So it's interesting. I'm listening to this like, oh,
wait a minute, wait. You like soft magic,
right?
but when you write,
So
you write
I started laughing because you were like, I have a reverence for it. I have no reverence for it.
It's hilarious.
So one of the things I've started doing is I am now. This is all a magic system, by the way. All of these notes.
Holy shit. Are you about to get into that?
Yeah.
Let me go to the bathroom. That's all your magic.
Okay, sure. All right, so there's a couple things with regards to magic systems. One, I would maybe not have gone super into the hard magic, but I now need to translate D&D into a magic system that exists.
Oh, because you're rewriting
And stories that have happened make it hard. There is a magic system that I do want to write. It's totally different, and I don't have it as planned out, but it's based in the idea that it's a crazy hard magic system, but magic in this world is kind of scary to the point where you can make new magic.
Okay.
And there is an entire, families of magicians are dedicated to different things. There's an entire family of magic dedicated to vetting new magic to make sure it's allowed to be used. And if not, they'll just kill the person who made it. To the point where it's like, because like new magic is fucking scary.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
Don't know what's going to happen.
Huh.
There is an internal logic to like all the current magic that exists, and it all like falls into different classes and things. But it's actually sort of a reflection of what we're talking about. They refuse to let any magic that works differently from that get made. Any magic that doesn't have an exact and precise rule and explanation, you have to write up a thesis for what it is and why and how and et cetera. And if you don't have that, you're probably going to get killed. So
Because
it's almost like
potential
I feel like it's
danger.
almost rooted in my dislike of hard magic systems. It's like it's a hard magic system where the people who use hard magic are assholes and hate soft magic. But there is a character who is very off, and he is one of the main characters, and there is an incredibly powerful type of magic being formulated, and they don't know what it is, and they're worried about it. And the family that vets magic is almost completely gone. There's only a few of them left.
Okay.
And at some point they start to realize that they're actually being systematically targeted, and this insanely powerful form of magic is threatening to be loose on the world. That's from the character Jack Darkbloom that I had talked about. It's the Darkbloom family.
Okay.
And his whole thing is that he can only use very weaker or low levels of magic. But for whatever reason, magic doesn't tend to hurt him very much. And he does not run out of energy to use very low magic. He can just keep going. To where I want to get into the story at some point, but the final point of that would be the actual form of magic that they created is the ability to create full people out of magic, which I think is maybe rooted in the whole artificial intelligence thing. And that character has been created entirely through magic.
That's really
and
cool.
He doesn't know it. And that is the climax, is them realizing that. It's just why he has certain abilities, why he doesn't get hurt by magic. But I also want to write him being weird and describing things like wrong, like he doesn't get them.
Well,
that was interesting. I'm gonna have to edit that down so much. I don't want people to think about it.
That's fine.
But yeah, those are like, it's interesting in how like you've talked about the development of your magic system, and I've talked about the development of my magic system. And ironically enough, the problems that I'm running into is I want to explain more. Which is precisely, here's the actual thing. I don't want to explain more to the audience. I want to know how it works.
Yeah.
And then that way be able to control a very specific flow of information.
I think my biggest flaw is that I assume everyone who consumes any media that I create will ask the questions that I ask.
Yes.
And because of that, I have to have an answer for everything.
Yes.
Which is wrong. Most people don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Like, they don't care. They're like, I like that guy because he's funny, and that's all they care about, right? So it's like...
Yeah, and that's like, okay, that's the thing. We talked so much about Harry Potter being a bad magic system. That is like the best-selling book series.
Yeah, most people don't care at all.
Most people, like, you can read it and be like, this is stupid. You kind of also don't care.
Yeah. Yeah. We were judging specifically that part of it.
Yeah. A magic system is this is the other thing that I think it is also Brandon Sanderson who said this. Like, you have setting. Basically, magic systems are largely a part of setting. Setting, character, and plot. A good novel can have like a mediocre setting, really good characters, and really good plot, and be a really good novel.
Yeah.
A setting is like a nice to have. You can have, if you have like a bad plot, good characters, and good setting, the odds are more stacked against you. Same thing with good plot, bad characters, good setting. Generally, 2 of the 3 is probably still at least decent.
Yeah.
But if you had the Jettison one setting, there are like, that's why like you can have stuff set in now with characters that like, you know, you can have stuff set in now and it's fine.
This is also a thing where they'll kind of just function off of like cultural consciousness. You know about Harry Potter magic schools. This takes place in a magic school. That's not really the important part. The important part is this character or like this magic thing that you can do. The school doesn't, you get it. It's like, whatever. That's not the thing you're focusing on.
Or like the Tolkien thing, right? Like his setting was so huge, but now you can just be like, he's a dwarf. And you're like, oh.
I know exactly what a dwarf is.
I know what a dwarf is. Or like, this person's an elf. He's 100 years old. You're not like, whoa, why isn't he dead yet?
I like to imagine little like 8-year-old Hudson cracked open Lord of the Rings. And it was like, Sir Legolas, he's 200 or whatever. And you were just like, whoa!
Well, to be fair, they don't give an explanation for this. Aragorn's like 98.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's not. He's just fine. Because he's like got the blood of ancient Numenor, which is really powerful or whatever. Dude, people in Lord of the Rings, there ain't no one in that movie under the age of 50. This is a fun little fact for you. Frodo's like 56.
That's deeply concerning. Really?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Because hobbits live past 100, usually. Pretty reliably. He's like 35 human years, and then he's like an 18-year-old in The Lord of the Rings.
Wait a minute. Does anyone live a shorter lifespan than humans? Or humans just die the quickest?
Yeah.
I just assume because I put them on opposite ends of a spectrum that dwarves die early. But that's not from elves, but that's not the case.
It's like orcs and goblins, I think.
Oh.
Because they're bad.
Well, they're not even like people, right? They're just like mindless monsters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like bad in Lord of the Rings. They're actually like worse in Harry Potter, because in Harry Potter, they're like more than subhuman. They're Jewish.
Yeah, that's okay. The magic system and then maybe some of the racial implications we're not awesome about.
Anyways.
She made them bankers. She made them bankers.
It could have been anything else. It would have been like, that's a little suspicious, but she made them bankers. Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, one takeaway from this episode is that if it's a good magic system, it's not racist.
Well,